Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, the first game of the NBA Finals. Dang, man, that was tough, man. That first quarter, wow, man. I mean, talk about a letdown. That was brutal. 37-20 in the first quarter, and they were just pretty much just playing catch up. KP,
yeah,
he made a statement. He rested 38 days for this, man. what was your thoughts? What's your initial reaction just to game one?
I mean, I'm not going to talk about the officiating because let's leave that for the league office to figure out what happened, because there were some egregious non-calls in that game. Right, the first Luka layup over three defenders, 100% foul. Right, like let's leave that for what it is. Look, Boston is, they take the most threes, they make the most threes. That was the name of the game today. Like you saw Boston take like shots that you wouldn't normally see a team take. Like KP is shooting not even from like 27 feet. This dude was shooting from 30 feet. Drew Holiday is going pull-up threes against Luka. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, like this was a statement game from Boston, and good for them because they needed it after their struggles at home. Like I feel like Boston needed one of those games where they can be like, we deserve to be here. After all the criticism that they've gotten, that their players have gotten, the criticism of, hey, we haven't beat anybody in the Eastern Conference. We're here. Like, we deserve to be in the finals. Great. They proved it tonight. Like, Boston, look, let's be honest. If you compare the Mavericks and the Celtics, the Celtics are the better team. Like, you put roster to roster, the Celtics are the better team, and they proved it tonight. Dallas cut it close in the third quarter. They made it a 10-point game, right? It got to a point where Dallas could have come back. 8-point game. But what did Boston do? They played their game, and I feel like Dallas just got away from what they are best at, and that's scoring in the paint. And that hurts when Derek Lively is in foul trouble. It hurts when Daniel Gafford is not as effective as you want him to be. But I'm not worried. Like Jason Kidd he's 1-6 in the playoffs in game ones. And other than the Minnesota game, or other than the Minnesota series, Jason Kidd the Mavericks and Jason Kidd have come back to win game two. Or they've come back to win after a loss. So I'm not worried. Yeah. Like normally game one is a feeling out game for the Mavericks. Right? We saw it against the Clippers. We saw it against the Thunder. The Wolves that was just an anomaly because the Wolves just blew that game. Very similar to how the Pacers blew the game against the Celtics. So if you're the Mavericks, you have to take this and you have to go back and say, okay, what can we do different? The Celtics are not going to shoot this well from three. And they didn't in the second half. That's the thing. The Mavericks offense just stalled. Kyrie missed shots that he normally doesn't miss. Luka missed shots he doesn't normally miss. Same thing with PJ Washington. We saw Derrick Jones Jr. miss shots he doesn't normally miss. Like, there's a reason this is a 7-game series, right? You let it, you have the first game, let it come to you. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you said it well. I mean, it's game one, and I'll give all praise to the Celtics. Like you, I mean, they protected their home court and they did their thing. I mean, KP came out firing. The whole team came out firing in the first half, first quarter. And, I mean, you got to have a better game from your starters with the Mavs. I mean, outside of Luka, those other four players, Kyrie, PJ, Derrick Jones Jr., and Gafford, they got to bring it game two. And that's like you said, it's all about adjustments. It's all about how the team bounces back. I mean, they haven't lost 2 in a row in the whole playoffs. So let's see how game two goes. I mean, Kyrie he didn't even make his threes. Well, actually, PJ and Derrick Jones Jr. and Kyrie were 1 for 10 for threes. And that's a big part of their game. Luka had 1 assist, so you didn't even
Yeah,
have the lob threat. You didn't even have the
and
corner threes. You got to get going from there, especially those bigs. You got to take advantage of them.
I think it was Kyrie's worst shooting performance or worst scoring output in 14 finals games, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, he had
Something like
12
that, right?
points.
Like 12 points, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but you even look at Boston's side, like Boston. Here's the thing, right? Nobody on the Celtics scored more than 22, right? Jaylen
Yeah,
Brown had 22. Porzingis had 20 in 21 minutes, which, look, let's give credit to him because he was hitting everything.
he was
Like,
good. Yeah,
and great defense by Josh Green, PJ, Luca. Like, I thought the defensive effort was great. Kristaps just hit everything,
yeah,
and it's just, is it the I'm playing my old team effect? It didn't work for Kyrie, but Kyrie is we've seen him in the playoffs. Like Kyrie is more of a game 3, 4, 5 guy, right? With respect to the Mavs, like Luka still
yeah.
had 30 tonight. Like for the Mavericks, like you've got to have. I had a friend tell me this. You've got to have Luka and Kyrie close to perfect to beat Boston. And when he told me that, I kind of shied away from it. But it kind of makes sense, right? Like if Boston's going to hit their threes, like they take the most, they make the most, right? Like
Yeah.
You've got to be very, very efficient on the offensive rebound, on the defensive rebound especially, because if they miss, we've talked about it so many times. The Mavericks struggle on the offensive end when they miss threes with transition
Mm-hmm.
defense, right? If Boston's missing their threes, the Mavericks have to get those defensive rebounds and push the ball up and play in transition like they're very good at, right? With PJ and with Derrick Jones Jr. and with Luka or Kyrie running the break. Like, I feel like this was just a feeling out game. I think you saw it in the body language too, like into the third and like into the fourth quarter. Like you saw it, some of those turnovers at the end of the game. It was kind of just like, okay, like let's see what you guys are gonna do with this, right? And I have faith the Mavericks will come out and play a better game on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't really think Luka and Kyrie have to be perfect though. I mean, obviously Boston is the best team in the league, but also their role players didn't do much this game. So I mean, it's either or. Like Kyrie and Luka have to be really great, and the role players just have a game like Game One, or the role players play like we've seen in the postseason, in like the Thunder series where Kyrie, he was more of a facilitator while the role players were stepping up, and it's going to be tough, like you mentioned. Everyone has to play really good to defeat the Celtics, but I don't really try to come to a conclusion until you see Game 2, because that's like the real you know picture of the series. If the Celtics go up 2-0, or it's 1-1 coming back to Dallas, or you still home court advantage. So
It's
Sunday is
fair.
going to be a real test. It's for Kyrie, for PJ, for Derrick Jones Jr., and then also the bigs. Like you mentioned, the bigs didn't have a good game, so they got to get back to making those adjustments and seeing what they do, because they were not letting Luka get in the paint. I mean, it
Yeah.
was tough for him, because that's where you play that cat and mouse game where you can have some lobs, and then you get those corner threes when they collapse, and you really didn't see that this game. So obviously Luka got his. I mean, he had 30. He was the first player to have 30-point double since in their finals debut since Tim Duncan. And it's really, you're really going to need that in Game 2 and more assists. I mean, Luka has to be spot on. And then we'll just see how Kyrie and the rest of the team does. But man, the Celtics came out and they made a statement, because obviously they had a cakewalk to the finals. Let's be honest. And they finally
Oh,
play a
definitely.
healthy team, and They made a statement, in which they should, like you said, they weren't horrible, but they played very poorly at home compared to how they did on the road. And tonight, they just the second half they have to get better, obviously. But you know, I think it'll be in the middle of that first quarter in the second half, or not even the second half, the rest of the game, because the Mavericks did compete with them in that second and third quarter. Fourth quarter, the first half, Kid just rested the players in like 5 minutes to go. But like, I think it's really going to be a test to how they play in the first quarter, because you saw with the Timberwolves when they came out in the first quarter and they were hot, it kind of set the tone for the series. Obviously, the first two rounds they fell flat against the Clippers and the Thunder, and they came back. But you want to see more of what you saw in the Timberwolves series, where they threw the first punch instead of adjusting to the other team. But obviously, it's the Celtics, so every single quarter, every single game matters, every single play matters. So they can't take this series lightly, or you're going to go home early. So to make this a long series, or to match our predictions, they have to hit the Celtics first, and they have to make their threes.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're taking the Celtics lightly. I think
That
if you
first
look at the
quarter,
first quarter,
they
dude,
were
that
getting
first
too
quarter,
many good looks, like wide
they
open.
they got good looks, and I think if
They
you
should have
go
made
back and
more
look at the first
threes.
quarter, true, okay, I'll give you that. I think the rotations were okay. I don't want to say that the Mavericks are bad in their rotations. I think they were okay. I think they underestimated the ball movement of the Celtics, right? You haven't played them since what, January? Right? Like
March.
March. Okay. You haven't played them since March. You've just gone through like three really, really like crucial series, or like really, really like grind out series, right? The Celtics are not a grind out team. They're very finesse, right? They're very ISO, and I've said this before, ISO, kick out. That's the Celtics game, right? It's get Jalen Brown, get
That's the
Jason
Thunder's
Tatum,
game too.
and the Mavericks adjusted
And they
after
mad.
game one, right? Like,
True. Yeah.
and
So that makes my point.
I agree with you. I think in the second half the Mavericks adjusted well. It's just the offense didn't catch up to the defense, right? Like the defense played much better in the second half than, and also let's be honest, right? I think the Celtics shot like 60-something% in the first half from three. Like, it's gonna regress, right? Like, you're not gonna see KP and Derek White and Drew Holiday hit 30-foot bombs from three, right? And Sam Hauser start hitting shots over like Derek Jones Jr. Like, that's not gonna happen, and the Mavericks are not gonna shoot 21% from three. Like it's going to regress. It's going to be even somehow. Dallas just has to get back to their game. Like, Derek Lively being in foul trouble was super critical for Boston to win this game. Like, if Derek Lively's not in foul trouble, Dallas has a shot. Like, Derek Lively is, and Landon, we've talked about this. He's the third most important person on the Mavericks from a rim protection, and we've seen what he can do even as a perimeter defender. Right? Like, you need him on KP, right? You can sub him out with Maxey. Like, him and Maxey are going to be the guys that are defending a guy like KP and Al Horford. Like, Daniel Gafford should not be playing a lot of minutes in this series. And it's not to say that Daniel Gafford is not a good player. It's matchup based. Lively and Kleber.
Yeah.
There you go. And Lively and foul trouble really hurt the Mavericks tonight.
Yeah.
And Kyrie missed shots that he normally doesn't miss. Luka missed some shots he doesn't normally miss. It happens. Like, it's basketball. Like, it's game one of the finals. We've seen the way the Mavericks recover after losses.
Yeah.
We just have to hope that adjustment stays, and Sunday night is a different outcome than tonight was. And I said this before the game started. I think I tweeted this out, and I know I told some friends. I said, there's especially in the finals, you rarely see blowouts, right? You rarely see games that are 15, 20-point games. There's going to be one in the series that's a blowout. I think that was tonight. I think that's it. I think every other game from now on is going to be 10 or less.
Yeah.
The Mavericks just have to play their game, be the team that they've been since the trade deadline, and things should work out the way that we hope they will.
Well, what do you think the answer is? I mean, do you think it's more of the Clippers series where they take away the three and just allow Tatum and Brown to drive to the paint and, have the bigs protect the rim? I mean, how do you, if you're a kid, how do you adjust to a team that's so efficient? I mean, one of the best in NBA history.
I mean, if I'm Jason Kidd, I'm 100%. I'm taking away the three. Against Boston, I don't know if you can take away the three. That's the problem, right? Like they take the most, right? In the I think they take the most in NBA history. If you look back, right? Like
Yeah, and they're all good passers,
and they have great ball movement. Like this is not to say that Boston's not Boston is a very very good. Like if you look at historically, Boston's one of the best teams in the last 25 years, record wise.
yeah,
Right? Like this is a very good team, regardless of if they played in the East. Like they're still a very good team. If you're the Mavericks, you have to play your brand of basketball. Because to your point, Landon, the Clippers took a lot of threes. And I think OKC tried to do the same thing in games like 3 and 4. Like they would try to work the ball out like on the perimeter to try to get Gafford and Lively out of the paint. The problem was they weren't hitting the threes because the Mavericks would close out on the ball handlers, right? So Dallas just has to do. There were so many times this game where you would leave like Sam Hauser open, you would leave Derek White open, you'd leave Drew Holiday open. Like you've got. It doesn't matter who it is. You've got to close out. If you're Derek Lively, if you're Gafford, if you're Derek Jones, just close out. Like whoever's gonna. If you give up an offensive rebound, that's fine. Don't give up the three. 2 is better. 2. If you're on the defense, 2 is better than 3. Right? I'd rather give up a defensive rebound and a putback than a 3-point shot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, especially when you have, the amount of bigs that they do they're at their healthiest point in the postseason when you have all bigs. You have Gafford, Maxey, and Lively, and even PJ at the 4. So you have 4 really good rebounders and protection. Who can alter shots at the rim. You have to really take away the threes and do what you can because you can't allow them to, have another first quarter or have a second half where they actually make more threes. So, you have to find a way. So that's what it seems like that's what we're all curious on, how the Mavs are going to make adjustments in game 2. Obviously, they played better in the last 3 quarters. And they even got it down, they cut a 29-point lead down to 8, which is incredible. But you can't start the game off that way. So, obviously, like you said, Celtics take a lot of threes. They make a lot of threes. But they've had a lot of games where they shot less than 6. They made less than 16 threes in this postseason. They had a lot of games where they made less than 12, against the Cavs and the Heat. So you got to find ways to adjust and see what some of the things that worked for them, because this team, obviously KP puts a huge wrinkle into that, how good he is of a space shooter. It's funny because that's what he didn't want to do in Dallas.
Yeah.
That was like the perfect role. It shows.
I mean, look, we can talk about the KP thing and I will give credit to him for acknowledging that he didn't accept his role the way he should have, right? Like, can you imagine this version of KP on the Mavs?
Yeah.
Like, this version of KP that buys into being the stretch 5 that we wanted him to be? Oh, my God. Like, with him, Brunson,
like Brook Lopez. That's, like, the perfect role
I'm just thinking, like prior, right? Like,
That's what I'm saying. Like a big guy who can shoot threes and protect the rim.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Yeah, I mean, and look, hats off to KP for acknowledging like who he is and what his role is. Good for him, right? Like I will never speak ill of a guy that. Look, I loved KP. when the Mavs got him, I was I think it happened on my birthday actually when the Mavs traded for him. A couple 4 or 5 years ago. I was so happy. But good for him for acknowledging like his mistakes and like now being like the key cog in the machine for Boston. He's not going to hit 30-foot 3-pointers like the rest of the series. It's like I feel like this was one of those games where it's like you're the home team, like you've got to make a statement. To your point, right? You said that Boston's got to make a statement. They did that, right? They win by almost 20. Like there's all this media talk of the pressure's on Boston. Boston's got to win. That's fine. What have the Mavericks done every time they've lost a game this postseason? They've come out and they've won the next game, right? They've made the necessary adjustment. Dallas has to come out and win game 2. And let's not forget, Boston notoriously is very bad in game 2s at home.
True.
Right?
True.
So this is a prime position for Dallas to take one in Boston. You have to get one in Boston. Yeah. You have to even this series before you come back to Dallas.
So you're telling everyone, don't push the panic button. Wait to see the adjustments.
We've seen this before. Like we've seen Dallas lose to the Clippers. We've seen them lose to the Thunder in game 1, and they've come back and won the series in 6 games. Like there's no reason to panic. Like the Mavericks got blown out by the Clippers game 1. Like it happens. It is what it is. They almost came back against the Clippers. What was it? Game 4? Game 5?
Yeah.
Where they were down 30 and almost came back to win. It happens. It's the playoffs. These are the best 2 teams left in the NBA. Like things are going to happen, like you've got the cream of the crop of players. You just have to play your game. And Derek Lively has got to stay out of foul trouble. Daniel Gafford's got to be more effective. And, whatever the refs want to do is what the refs want to do. I'm not going to talk about that, but, Dallas just has to play their game. Stick to what you are the best at. And that's getting into the paint, get your points in the paint, kick it out when it's necessary. Kyrie is not... We said this before when Kyrie had a 9-point game against Oklahoma City, and he came back with, a 29-point game, and 20 of those were in the second half. Kyrie's not going to score 12 again against Boston.
I mean, Tatum's not going to score 16. I mean, it's going to be back and forth. I mean, it really just boils down to Mavs just playing better. I mean, the refs, of course, but it's in Boston. They're the best team in the league. They're at home. They're going to get their, they're going to get the favor of the calls. Let's just be honest. And so the Mavs just have to play better, and that's the only way you combat it. Get to the paint, get more free throws. You can't depend on playing their game. Like you said, they have to play the Mavs game, and that's what you saw in the Timberwolves, and then the Thunder, which, like you said, is a kind of a mirror of this game 1, but that was in the fourth quarter. This was in the first quarter. You just got to make sure that you play your game, because the Thunder and Clippers, what we saw was they played their game and they adjusted in game 2. So now we just got to see them, resemble that and adjust in game 2 and try to take away those threes and just try to have your bigs, stay on the court and play better. So we'll see how game 2 goes. I'm not going to really give a full, complete analysis of how I think the Mavs should do in this series until I see game 2. Obviously, we gave a little bit in game 1, but you kind of expect that when you're playing the best team in the league. I still have them in 6. That's our predictions. We have to stay with them.
We both did.
Yep. So we'll see how they do in game 2. But if you had to pinpoint, one thing from this game, what would you like to see more of it in game 2?
Just play your game, man. I feel like the Mavericks got away from what they were doing. Like, and it's hard when you play a team that you haven't played a lot, and it's different. you didn't play the Timberwolves before the trade deadline. You played OKC obviously very closely, but you kind of understand the way that those teams operate. I feel like OKC, Minnesota, and the Clippers are very similar in certain ways. Boston's a very different team. Boston is very ISO, kick out three, and then you have one guy going for the offensive rebound. Like Dallas just has to adjust, but play your game. Like go inside. Like if you're not gonna do the foul call, that's fine. Just drive inside. Get your, play your game. You led the league in paints in the point. Like just play your game. That's all that matters. Like stick to what you were doing. Stick to what makes you successful. And I have faith. Jason Kidd has proven it time and time again that after game one, after a loss, the Mavericks have come back and they've rebounded and they've understood what is necessary to win the next game. And I have complete faith in this team that they'll come back and they'll tie the series hopefully on Sunday night. They just have to stick to what they know.
Yeah, I just want to see more assists. I mean, 9 assists in the whole game. The Celtics had 9 blocks, the same amount of assists that the Mavericks had.
And that's missed shots though too, right? Like,
yeah, but I'm talking about like just make more easy points. True. You got to get more easy points, especially in the lane, like you said. With the bigs, you got to get a couple lobs. You got to do something. Get in the paint where you have more open looks from the perimeter, and just hopefully they go in for your team. But you definitely want to see them attack the paint, get more free throws, just to get in the rhythm, just to slow the game down where they can catch their breath and huddle up. Remember, we highlighted those huddles that Kyrie does and Luka does to get your team in, and they're very accountable. Like they hold themselves accountable. Like they always tell each other what they're pointing out that should be fixed, and that's what Lively said. I mean, a lot of players say that as well. So you want to see them get in the paint, attack the paint, get some fouls called. Force the refs to make blatant calls, like blatant non-calls where you're like, okay, that was crazy. Like you have to make this call, especially in the game 2 where you're trying to tie up the series.
That's a good point.
So I would like to see that, and just also see Kyrie have a better game in game 2 just to tie the series up. Especially, you got to take the crowd out of it. Boston is a rowdy crowd, so you want to, that's the only way they're going to be silent is if Kyrie has a Kyrie game. You mentioned it in the finals, especially, because they booed him the whole game, and he's capable of silencing them. So I want to see him have a better game in game 2 as well.
I'll tell you one stat I heard. Last time the Dallas Mavericks in the finals lost to game 1, they went on to win the finals. So, just a little revisionist history there.
That is true. Against the best team in the league. One of the best ever. One of the best ever teams in the league.
The last time the Mavericks were underdogs by this much was the last time they played the best team in the league, which was the Miami Heat. So, who knows?
They got to make more threes. Luka got to get in the paint more and play your cat and mouse game with the bigs, and Kyrie has to have a Kyrie finals game. So Kyrie's
just got to be Kyrie, man. That's it.
Yep. All right, y'all see the usernames. Make sure y'all follow us on social. Make sure y'all like and subscribe the pod. We appreciate y'all tuning in. Shahnavaz is actually going on vacation tomorrow and hours away.
Just for a couple of days. I'll be back. Don't worry.
Hopefully you'll be back and the Mavs will be back.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see y'all game 2.